All right. And we are live. So there we go. All right. So a little technical glitch to start, but we're good here. Welcome to the Education Fix. We are really excited to have our whole crew here. We have Dr. Bernardo, we have Dr. Nunziato, as well as our guest, Etienne. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
All right. So real quick, I'll let Rich and Anthony, you say hello. Then Etienne, if you could quickly introduce yourself. And I know you have a pretty amazing book out too. And we'll get into the topic of the day, which is really talking about whether to have students and teachers, for that matter, put their camera on or not. So Rich and Anthony, want to just quick say hey?
All right, I'll defer to you first.
Oh, excuse me, I'm
Rich,
sorry. I was referring to the good-looking people first.
There you go. So begin. Yes.
Good morning. At least it's morning for us right now. Very pleased to be here with Etienne and Anthony now.
And Anthony?
I was just excited about not only the conversation, but our guest, who has a great and interesting career. And you know, just listening to him talk, I hear that word passion, and too often we don't hear the word passion enough. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
And Etienne?
I'm looking forward to this too. I think we should not be shy about any topics right now as we're juggling online, in class, and hybrid learning. So Al, I'm really appreciate being invited here to talk about this particular issue. Let's get right to the nitty gritty about cameras on or off, advantages, disadvantages. Let's talk about it.
So I was turned on to this topic. There was an article by Will Richardson, and Will posted something on whether cameras should be on or off for students. So just to set this up, and it got a ton of play, and the back and forth was amazing to me to see how passionate people were about this. So there's two pieces to it. There's the on or off for teachers, but there's also the on or off for students. I think we'll start with the student choice or not choice of as we move into this either online or blended model, we're really seeing the use of obviously WebEx and Zoom, and teachers are confronted with trying to teach in this really new world. Now, we could have a whole conversation on whether it should be this new to education or not, because I wish that we were more prepared for this, but we weren't. But now teachers are forced into trying to teach in an online space. And often that is, I think people have sort of defaulted to, there has to be some kind of synchronous element to it. Yeah. And there's this thing out there about whether children that are at home being instructed online synchronously should have their cameras on or not. And this is what I really want to get into. We'll start, Etienne, we'll start with your thoughts on it, and then Rich and Anthony will jump to you. And we're just going to have a pretty organic conversation about this. I'll chime in as well. But I want to hear, Etienne, especially your thoughts as our guest here.
Well, thanks, Al. I think I'd echo a lot of the thoughts of my own students. Those are what come to my mind first. When some of them request, can we not have our webcams on? Actually, as I get a request sometimes, and some of them say, particularly if I'm delivering a lesson, for example, they find it actually distracting seeing the other faces at the same time. Though they do have the ability to control those things, sometimes they just don't, and they leave screen as is. But they say to me, because normally in a classroom, they wouldn't normally be facing all the other 30 faces at the same time. So they do find that distracting, as much as they are multitask type generation kids that they are, and they're used to that kind of squirrel mentality, but still they find it quite distracting. So I think the answer to almost everything in life is moderation, and realizing that black and white is just there's it's finding that happiness inside the gray. Personally, I think that I'm going to agree with my students that if the concentration has to be on the teacher or a screen for a lesson, I say, no webcams personally for the students, and then we'll get into the whole teacher one after. That's where I'm at. What do you guys feel?
So go ahead, Rich, Anthony, thoughts?
You know what fascinates me about this whole disruption that we're dealing with, and and venturing into this online, albeit reluctantly, because I don't think K-12 world has been prepared for that at all.
Mhm.
But this, and this is not my area of expertise, but there's a psychology around this whole concept of online. My thoughts are, and my thoughts are more toward the social emotional impact of
Yes.
online. And, is it something that kids who may be shy would feel a little better if or a little more comfortable with the distance that online generates? Do kids find it much more valuable and useful because it plays into their social skills and their social media skills? I know I could see, older people. I know some of my colleagues who are older, and not Rich because he's very tech savvy, but some of my colleagues who just are lost in dealing with the online piece, and I wonder how does this impact the child who may have social emotional issues? Do they want to hide more behind them? Does it make them much more willing to participate? And that's more of a question, than anything else. How
Yeah,
is it really impacting those kids?
yeah. I wanted, Rich, I want to hear what you have to say as well, but I want to just highlight something, Etienne, you said that I really had not thought of, and that is not just whether students want to have their camera on or not. And Anthony, it speaks to that anxiety, the social emotional piece, whether they want that on or off, but also the fact that they're looking at every other one of their students. I'd never thought of them thinking in that. And I think talking to students is really key, right, with this, and understanding what they want and why they feel like they feel as well. But that was really interesting to me, not just the student facing the teacher, which I think they're uncomfortable with, but also having to look and have them, the other students, see them too, right? And that vulnerability of that. So that was really interesting, that piece of it. Rich, good. I want you to chime in as well.
Yeah, one of my tortured metaphors just occurred to me. These are the times to try men's souls, kind of premise. This crisis has certainly scraped clean some things that we did not confront or embrace that we should have embraced a long time ago, as I've said several times. And this is certainly one of them. And connected to that would be what Anthony, I think, offered, was the SEL piece. And I have a quick anecdote. I was with my wife and I were babysitting two granddaughters. One's 9 and one is 6. So I said, you know what, Grandpa's going to be on a podcast tomorrow. What do you think? And the little one, who's the 6-year-old, is a very shy kid in many ways. I asked her, do you like the camera on you? And she said yes. So I was surprised when she said that, actually. So I like to see the other kids, and I like when the teacher, I think the teacher's looking at me. We're surprised. I mean, this is an anecdote. It's not necessarily something we can generalize. And the older one said she really felt, because she's a little political liberal in the family, said, well, I think it should be our choice. And I don't know how you do that technologically. I guess you can figure that out. So there's different perspectives. If we can generalize from two little girls, we could say that we're not going to find one size fits all opinion about this, at least from the child side of the street. But the SEL piece, clearly, well, the whole online, I mean, I think that might be the biggest objection to why we're not doing more online. If I understood the objection to online instruction this past spring, that we felt we were losing students on that corner. And I presume that's true. And yet it might also say that we haven't figured out a way to make that connection from the technological side. I don't have the answer to that, but it's an observation.
So at the end, we have really two sides here, right? The choice or on, and I guess you could say off is a choice, completely off is a choice too. But it seems like we are, as a system, as an institution, as organizations, education is saying it's either on or they have a choice, right? And what are, as you're in a classroom, you're a teacher, like what is your thought as far as which one can you teach if it's a choice? Does it make it harder? Does it make it more challenging? Is it just as easy versus having them on all the time? Or is it like you mentioned, that moderation piece where they have to be on when you want it to, and So where do you kind of sit on that piece?
Exactly. I think it feeds into what both Richard and Anthony were saying, with the whole emotional piece, the mental health, absolutely. So I personally make sure that they know that they have the choice to have the camera off. And then I'd let them know when I absolutely need it on. Now I teach languages, so now we could talk about how subject areas are
There you
going to change the whole dynamics of this as well. So there's times where I need to see their faces so that we're actually, it looks like we're talking one-on-one, even if it's virtual. So there are going to be those times, but I will absolutely respect that. And Anthony, I'm so glad that you brought that up. On top of my role as a teacher, as my role as a rock star, my educational performer, I'm an ambassador for Kids Help Phone. And so I actually, Kids Help Phone is as big in Canada. It's the phone number that everybody knows that they can reach students, particularly when they're having difficulties or questions, mental health issues and things like that. I'm really, really glad that you brought that up. And so out of respect, I think we have to allow the students to have the choices to have the camera off unless it's absolutely subject specific related.
So Etienne, you are one, and we didn't get into your background, but I before we go, I want you to talk about the book as well. But you are one to engage and connect with students and learning, clearly, based on your background, based on your book that's out now. It's called
Rock Your Class. And so it's basically about realizing that we as teachers, we're all rock stars. But the point of the book and the point of being a rock star teacher is to let the students realize that they're the true rock stars and let them become everything that they can possibly become, despite the obstacles of things that are going on around us. One of the chapters in the book, Rock Your Class, is called Keep Up. And so, Richard, I love what you were saying before, because it reminded me of that chapter, because I encourage teachers and I give a bunch of tips of how to keep up with where they're at. So the funny thing is, there really shouldn't be much of a question about how do we teach these students online. We do it via the methods that they're used to. We do it in a TikTok way. We do it in a Snapchat way. And you learn what that means. You learn how to protect them emotionally and, you know what I mean, all the stuff like that. But you can actually still deliver powerful lessons the way that they learn. And you can be, don't mean to group all of us, gentlemen, but you could be our ages. that we are, and we can still absolutely do this. I work with a lot of districts as a consultant, and I have a COVID-proof checklist. And what it is for online, in-class, and hybrid teaching. And when you go down that list, it covers these exact issues that we're talking about. And then when I do my sessions or online courses, it springboards ideas from the book. So I love the energy that is coming from you, because I feel your sense of this can be done. Things aren't really being done right. I think there's a lot of red tape and administration maybe getting in the way sometimes. Yes. I think that, I'm sorry, I sound like I'm on a soapbox here. I just want to add this. There's the necessary talk about sanitizer and masks. That's great, but there's not enough talk about what now. We're online with the what now. And that's what I love to help school districts with. And
so Etienne, I want to put this to you in the group too. You mentioned that you give them a choice. So if you have a student that says, no, I'm absolutely not on camera, how does that impact your ability to teach? Because that's what it comes down to. Teachers want to be able to teach effectively. They're anxious, they're nervous. It's a new environment for them. It's a new world, right? So why does it affect, or it may not, does it affect your ability to teach if they opt and say you have half the class that you can't see versus everybody on at the same time? How does that affect you as an educator? And Anthony and Rich, obviously I want to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Okay, so I'll be really quick. It does not affect me. I just had mentioned how I do require them actually to be on camera so that we can converse, practice our French language and stuff like that. But I still give them the opportunity to, if you don't want to do this particularly live when there's other people around, or even particularly live when we're together, I offer them other solutions, such as videotaping themselves and then uploading the file to me. There are different ways you can do on Google Forms where you can actually have a conversation with each other by quickly recording each other's responses to each other. That makes a lot of the students feel more comfortable. There's always an answer. There's always an answer.
So alternative assessments, alternative methods for evaluating their progress. And I love the few that you mentioned. Rich, Anthony, thoughts?
Well, what I see here is that opportunity, and I'm so glad, Etienne, what you just said, and that is, we have taught in a traditional manner for so many decades where every child had to be in this box, whether it was a square peg in a round hole, we had to push it in. And this gives us the opportunity to not be that way and to not do that. And I don't know if, and this is a question really more for, because I'm not in the classroom, K-12 classroom, I'm in a doctoral classroom, but are teachers taking advantage of what you just said? And that's an important question. Here's an opportunity for us to be far more engaging, to apply more problem, project-based inquiry types of learning that may not have really been going on very often or very, very prevalent in a very prevalent manner. And I think that and I love the fact of choice, because it'll, again, the education should fit the child, not the child fit the education. And I think that's so important. And I only hope that the benefits of this pandemic on the education world can be that way. Like, we can be more engaging. We can be more interesting. And maybe maybe more kids would want to be in the classroom instead of out of the classroom. When you ask a kid, what's your favorite part about school? Lunch and recess. Maybe they'll change that. Maybe they'll change their response. It's French. My French class.
Rich?
Yeah, 2 points. One's a quick one. I'm actually embarrassed to share this. And I haven't taught K-12 world in a while, but I was teaching a couple of doctoral classes and in the beginning of all of this online. And I didn't know that followers of Islam don't want their faces on a screen.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know it. So I said to one of the students, I won't use her name, I said, we can't see you. And she very gently explained to me that she's a Muslim and she's not going to be on the screen. So it was an opportunity for me to recognize my own cultural deficiencies to some extent. And I obviously honored it. Of course I honored it. But those are the kinds of things too that probably need some more investigation. And the other piece that comes back to is to echo what both Etienne and Anthony have mentioned before. And I said before, when we've scraped something out, and yes, it's a wound, and yes, it's going to have to heal. But I kind of hope then, sooner rather than later, when this crisis begins to resolve itself, or is resolved, maybe is another way to put it, I truly hope that we don't forego some of the innovations that may just organically fall out of a tree, that we hadn't necessarily, I hate this word, but here it comes, systematized, made consistent across the board. So everyone will know the strategies that emerge from good online instruction can translate, no pun intended, Etienne, to back to a face-to-face classroom and be nurtured that much more to the extent that we choose to continue online instruction when this crisis begins to go away.
So we're close to time here, but I'm hearing a theme of, with everybody, empathy and understanding of the needs of children, no matter what environment that is, right? And especially Rich, you mentioned this, Anthony, you mentioned social, emotional, Etienne as well. I think for all of us, whether it's choice or no choice, I think when you err on the side of no choice, you lose that understanding, that empathy, whether it's a religious piece, whether it's they're anxious about being on camera, and to have this, thank you for saying this, Etienne, these alternate ways and reminding people that even in the classroom, there's never just one way. There's different ways you're going to have to assess and evaluate and connect, right? And that's what it's about, a connection and engagement with everything we do in education. That's what it should be about, right? And there's different ways to do that, whether students have emotional, social, emotional things going on, whether they're, they don't have those things going on, but they have stuff going on at home, whatever it might be, they have a learning disability, whatever it might be, we have to adjust, right? So I think that's a really important thing. I want to really quickly give Rich, Anthony, a last word, and then Etienne, of course, is the final, and then we'll cut off. Etienne, we didn't get to the teacher piece, but we'd love to have you back on either next week or the week after, whatever you're around, to talk about the teacher view, because that's a really important piece as well. Whether a lot of them don't want to be on camera, they don't want to be, sort of evaluated at home from parents watching. So that's a big piece that I really want to get into as well. I think we covered the student piece really well today, but really final thoughts from Rich. We'll start, Anthony, and then Etienne.
One of my other sayings is organic always trumps inorganic. And so the organic things that have emerged or are continuing to emerge nurture themselves to emerge, to hopefully become part of a school culture. But you can't ignore the inorganic piece, which would be there's certainly a role for leadership to nurture that organic. And that's something I think maybe that's a third piece to this, Al. You talk to school administrators to find out what they do to encourage, have all these things, all these pieces fit. Because this is to be continued.
Anthony?
You started off talking about the vital nature of this topic when it was discussed and when it was brought up by Richardson. And, I think it reverberates throughout our entire profession and industry. And here's why. If you strip bare this question of camera on, camera off, to me, it smacks more of accountability. That's why when you're talking about choice, Etienne, that to me is the progressive, much more important response to this. Because when we say, well, if the camera's off, that means we can't see what they're doing. We don't know what they're doing. Where's the accountability to make sure that they're doing what they are supposed to be doing? And I think that whole, again, it's one of those things that just is driven by accountability, and we miss the boat more often than not. We misinterpret that accountability. That's why I'm glad to hear about putting forward this concept of choice. But this is a question that needs to be answered, and not just for camera on, camera off, but for almost everything we do in education, in terms of assessing and evaluating children, how we do that. So this is a conversation that's probably going to be going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Etienne?
And I hope the conversation does continue. Exactly what Richard was saying. This is a moment for conversation. It's a moment for change. We talk about fear. There's the fight or flight, right? So are we going to use this as a moment to bear down and let's stick to tradition as much as we possibly can? Are we going to move forward and go, this is a chance for change. This is exciting. This is absolutely amazing. Mm. And when March hit and this started, I was so excited. I was like, this is fantastic. We do all these things, and it's just whatever, by God's grace, that the book came out at the exact same time. And so I've been able to be a part of this change with so many people, and it's been so exciting. And it's been great to see the fear change to excitement. So I want to see that continue. I want people to realize that there are an enormous amount of possibilities with this and choices, and the answers to those things, they come from involving the students in this equation as well. So we need, as teachers, to ask our students, not just wait for directives from administration, who themselves are trying their best to figure this out, but let's make this a whole team effort. And having conversations here, like on the Education Fix, this is how we start to do these things, and we have to continue them.
So well said, Etienne. And even with technology for years, I teach many teachers over the years and still do. And teachers are reluctant, have always been reluctant to integrate technology into the curriculum. And my thought to them is always try it and ask the students if it doesn't work and let them help you. The students are great resources for helping you with lessons that may or may not work, but also hearing their voice, hearing their opinion, like you mentioned. Etienne, thank you so much for being on the show. Your book again is
Rock Your Class. You can go to rockyourclass.com to check it out.
excellent, and we'll put a link in the description as well, and forward to your site. Exciting to have you on, and Etienne, hopefully we can continue the conversation in the coming weeks, and talk about the teacher perspective. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Anthony, and of course, thank you, Etienne.